What's going on, everyone? LT100 here, giving you a different type of video that's Thomas related. This time I'm giving you a ranking video of the classic era seasons. I know I'm not the only one who's done a video like this, but I just need to do something for this channel to help pass the time before we go into another month of weekly videos. So while I'm celebrating Thanksgiving in America, I present to you my ranking on seasons 1 to 7 of Thomas & Friends. And remember, these are my opinions on the seasons. So if you disagree with me and think they should be ranked on a different number, that's fine. Just don't throw out pitchforks and torches at me over this, because that's pretty immature and silly. Now that's out of the way, let's begin with my least favorite season of the classic era. Number 7. Season 6. I never liked this season very much when I was a kid, and I still don't to this day, for many reasons. First of all, how did we go from an intense and mature season to a toned-down season? I mean, the stories don't feel very exciting and very fun to watch. I get this was the first season of the show that had multiple writers, but I wish they put more thought on how to make them more interesting to watch before they turn the scripts in for the final cut. Second, the colors in this season are boring to look at. It looks like as if a kid with no interest just picked random shades of colors and used them so it can get out of the studio for dinner and get away with it. They just make the sets and characters look boring as well. I don't understand why they thought the dual colors they used was a good idea and not be creative like the teams in the previous seasons did. And third, say it with me now, Alec Baldwin's poor narration. I already mentioned this in my season 5 video last month, so I don't need to say a lot about it here. All I can say is that I had no idea what I was listening to when I was a kid. I knew he was the same guy from season 5 of Magic Railway, but he sounded like a different person who wanted to get his paycheck and leave the show for good. They either should have had him re-say his narrations in all the season 6 episodes but with more enthusiasm, or just hired a different actor who knows how to do it like Michael Angelis did in the UK version. I don't know why, but I can imagine Nicolas Cage or Jeff Goldblum doing the US narration instead of Baldwin. Now that I would have loved to see. So yeah, while there are some memorable episodes in the season, I just think it should have gone through multiple tries before they started working on the episodes. Like rewrites, adding more colors to the sets, and whatever else that would have worked for the season. Never got into the season as a kid, and still haven't to this day. Also, do I need to say anything about the episode that changed the history of the narrow gauge railway David Mitton thought was a good idea to do? That was just stupid. Number 6. Season 7. What, you thought this was going to be at the very bottom of the list, like most everyone else's ranking list? Well, not this time. I don't think Season 7 is as bad as others say it is. The sets are a lot better than Season 6, and I think Michael Brandon did a good job being the narrator in it. Okay, maybe not as good as he did in Seasons 8 to 16, but still a lot better than what Season 6 Baldwin did. However, I still think it had that down-tone storytelling element that I wish they learned from the previous season. And the fact that it took 3 flippin' years for all the episodes to finally come out on DVD in the US, to finally watch all of them instead of continuing to struggle to find them on television. If you watch the Unlucky Tugs' thoughts on Season 7 video from 5 years ago, then you will understand more of what I'm talking about. Makes me wonder if the people behind it was drinking too much and lost most of their brain cells and took them 3 long years to finally remember to release all of them on DVD. The only one that they didn't forget was the New Friends for Thomas DVD, even though it had Angelus's narration instead of Brandon's, but that doesn't matter. I guess it's more of the behind-the-scenes facts that bothers me more than the actual season. I wish we American fans were as lucky as the British fans for the season. Now that we got the 2 least favorite seasons out of the way, let's go ahead and see what good seasons are on this ranking list. Number 5. Season 1. Okay, let me explain before you start typing away complaining why I put this season on this spot instead of a higher number. I love this season. Every single episode is great and there's hardly any problems with it. I also love how every single episode of this season is based on the stories that the Reverend did. If it wasn't for this season being a hit, then we probably wouldn't have the show we all knew and loved. But I will admit, I think seasons 2 to 5 is better than what the first season did. Again, I really love this season, but it just doesn't feel exciting enough like what the other seasons did. Sure, there's episodes like Thomas and the Breakdown Train and The Flying Kipper, but other than those episodes, it felt like they were still figuring out how to make the show better while working on the season. Like how the first 2 seasons of Walking Dead wasn't the best start for the show, but it got a lot better when the 3rd season aired and the show kept getting better as time went by for the most part. Or how the first few seasons of the WandaVision miniseries were mostly silly and goofy, but got a lot better as the series continued. So yeah, that's basically what it's like here. But you know what? That's perfectly alright. Not every beginning to anything is the best. If you look back at the beginning of the LT100 remakes, you can tell I was still figuring out how to make it better as time passed by. And look where it's at right now. So basically, it's a good start for the show, but better as time passed by. At least it's better than the 2 seasons I talked about earlier. Number 4. Season 2. This is where I think the show got better right away. I think the crew sat down and took a look at what they did with the first season and found a way to make it more exciting and interesting for the audience to watch. For example, Percy and Harold having a race with the fast-pacing music playing in the background was very well done and took the time they needed to make it possible with the timing and angles they used to make the race more fun than what it could have been. Or how about Ghost Train? I know I mentioned this last month, but I can't help but bring it up again. The way they used the atmosphere for the entire episode and the way the second half of the episode was like as if I watched a Halloween episode was with the wrong rating, just like the movie Coraline. Anyway, my point is that I think this was the season where things got much better with the sets, stories, even the 2 narrators for both dubs kicked it up a notch, which made things even better. And as if that wasn't enough, things just got even better with the following seasons. Number 3. Season 4. A lot of fans would put this much higher on their ranking list, but I felt like this season fits perfectly here on my ranking list. I love how the first half of the show is all about the narrow gauge engines, then we get to the Stepney trilogy, and then the rest is just random episodes that either never made it to the previous seasons or got randomly selected to be on the season. But whatever the plans were, it worked perfectly. I don't think there's one episode where I say it's the weakest of the season. Sure, say all you want about Special Attraction, but I think the episode still worked for the most part, and I remember watching it a lot as a kid. I can't imagine how hard it was for the crew to make the season possible for the audience to love it and say how perfect it was. I mean, look how small the narrow gauge engines are. I could tell that it was a serious challenge for the model makers to do. They were so hard to make that they would do bigger models of them for the following seasons. I can't imagine what it would have been like for them if the show continued to stay on adapting the Railway series books and did the miniature railway instead of how the Brenner era did it. The other challenge I think was difficult for the crew was to make the sets look real. I don't mean the way they did for the other seasons in the classic era, but I mean as real as possible. Everyone, including myself, all agrees that this season had the best sets in the entire show. I mean, look at this. And tell me if this doesn't look like something that a photographer would take and we can't tell if it's real or not. They really made sure how to get it right. And they definitely made sure to not disappoint one person, from the summer feeling sets to the winter atmosphere to the foggy clouds taking over the ground. I remember as a kid wondering why we're getting a lot of a different railway on Soldor that concentrates on totally different engines on the first half instead of our main engines on the show like the other seasons did. But now that I'm much older and a bigger fan of the franchise, I can now understand what Britt and David did to try something new and different. This is, without a doubt, the most realistic and challenging season in the entire classic era. Number 2, Season 5. I think I already talked enough about why this season was great last month, so I don't need to go deep into the season again. What I'll say about the season in this video, though, is that this was obviously the direction Britt and David wanted to go before the failure of Magic Rail World. They wanted it to be more mature, creepy, and intense for the kids to watch, and I loved it as a kid. Plus, I think it's okay to scare kids in movies or shows that they're allowed to watch once in a while, and I highly recommend you show a child this season and see how he or she reacts to it. If you haven't seen my video on why this season introduced me to horror movies from last month, then I suggest you go check that out after watching this video. And now, the number 1 season of the classic era I think is the best is Season 3. You probably figured it out already since I haven't mentioned it one bit in this ranking video till now. Now I know what you all are thinking. Why is this season on the number 1 spot instead of 4 or 5? Well, to tell you the truth, I never saw half the episodes growing up. Yep, quite a shocker here. For some reason, I had bad luck finding half of the season on VHS or DVD growing up, while all the other fans in the fandom had. I never saw Heroes or Bulgy or even the Oliver episodes till I was in my teens. This was before YouTube even got released on the internet. So it was like trying to find multiple needles in a haystack, but somehow couldn't find any because of how difficult it was at the time. But thanks to YouTube, much later in life, I finally had my chance on watching what I couldn't find as a kid. And it felt like I was watching the show as a little boy all over again. But I think that's the point of being a bigger fan of Thomas and Friends now than when I was a kid. It's okay to be a kid at heart and never letting go of what you love very much, that you don't have the heart to do it. I remember when I was getting older, it felt a bit complicated on if I should let go of the one show that I adored very much or not. But YouTube came around and I bumped into some Thomas YouTubers who are much older and yet made Thomas content that we now count them as nostalgia classics in the fandom. So I made my decision and held on to the show since it means so much to me, and boy am I glad. Now that Mattel has cancelled the show just to make room for the unnecessary reboot that I don't think anyone even cares about, the fandom is now bigger and stronger than what it once was. We may have our disagreements on some things about the show, but we can definitely agree that it was what Britt, David, and the Reverend once created brought us to where we're at today. If I gave up on the show a long time ago, I'd probably be where I don't even want to know. 2017 was the worst year in my life. My family was falling apart, the lady I dated at the time dumped me to be with someone else, and I made some mistakes that I strongly regret from that year. It was like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from till 2018 came and started to bring me back from the darkness. I tell ya, if it wasn't for my love of Thomas and started working on the LT100 remakes almost 4 years ago, my heart would have continued being shattered in a million pieces and being a broken boy from that year. What Thomas showed me growing up was creativity and great storytelling plots. And that's one of the things that got me into wanting to be a movie director my whole life. Here we are nearly 4 years later, and I'm very happy to be where I'm at today. And I have zero interest in giving up my long-time dream and letting anyone tell me to give up and live a life, or whatever you boring people like to call it. It's like that one lyric goes from the Island song. Follow the road that leads to your dream, over the hills and mountains. Look for the skies with stars in their eyes. And that's exactly what I've been doing for nearly 4 years now, and I recommend you doing the same. Well everyone, I hope you enjoy my opinions on the classic seasons and understand why I either like or dislike them. This was a lot of fun working on, and I'm glad to get it done so I can move on with my break for the rest of the year. Stay tuned for next week, as it's going to be the start of this December's weekly videos for Christmas time, 4th year anniversary, and New Year's Eve. I'm LT100, and I'll see you all after New Year's. Peace!